This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. And we're very happy to be talking to Italian spoken word artist, Anna Utopia. And we're glad to have her on the program. This is the first time she's been on. And so will everybody, give her a hand from your home location.
Yeah. Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, very excited because we've had some spoken word artists. I actually started as a poet. When I was younger in college, I wrote a bunch of collections of poetry and I self-published, and I used to go around Mount Holyoke and Smith College in New England and actually do spoken word poetry at these like little poetry clubs, like coffee shops.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand. And then I kind of got into the ghost thing, but it's really cool. So we're actually gonna show two clips today. We're gonna show this first one, which I've got queued up, and maybe you can give the name of it, the Italian name.
So, yes, the Italian name is Entelechia or sul senso del dovere. In English, it's something like Enteleki or on the sense of duty. And this is the teaser trailer of the video.
Cool. So we're gonna get into this, and it's a short trailer, and then we have a longer one. And we actually might play the whole thing because I thought it was actually 40 minutes, but it's actually 6. So we can actually play the whole thing. So the longer one we'll play, and this one we're going to play out is like a minute, and then we'll come right back. We're going to mute your mic and we'll come right back, okay?
Yeah.
Lastre. Tutto il peso dell'infinito in atto, trascinato il negativo, rincorrendo i passi, le luci a Natale, un grillo, l'attesa, le frecce dell'auto, la mia voce, un audio di silenzio inframmettente, sospeso dal momento in cui in noi, incudine, avrei dovuto.
We're back on the air. So that is a really awesome video. So I know that's a teaser from a future project. We're going to get into more. But maybe you can talk a little bit about it in terms of like what the bigger project is for that.
Yes. This is the teaser trailer for Entelechia. Entelechia is one of the tracks from my album, my first album, Foglie d'Ombra. I released it a couple of weeks ago in March, and the name of this spoken word track is Entelechia, or on the sense of duty in English. Enteleki is a Greek concept related to Aristotle. It's something like tension. It's a way of an organism of being constantly in motion to actualize and reach a complete realization of itself, abandoning a state of potential. It's like a kind of persistent activity that makes the organism exist. And in this text, there are some provocative lines about an important social issue here in Italy, which is immigration from Africa. Every year, many people try to reach Italy from Africa on unsafe boats and in terrible condition, and crossing the Mediterranean Sea, and many people die in the process. And in Italy, there is a strong debate about how to help or not to help these people, and how to handle the immigration policy. So,
So let me just interject. I think that is a universal kind of thing. I mean, I would just want to kind of empathize with that, because in our audience, in the U.S., we have gone through in the last 4 years, we had a lot of problems with one
I know.
party having a very draconian concept about immigration, and on our southern border did some things that were probably similar to what your country is experiencing with that. In terms of our southern border, we were treating children really badly, basically kidnapping them, things like that. So
Yeah.
I think there's a universal issue today because there's so many people stressed, not just because of COVID, because of natural disasters, because of wars. People try to
Yes.
come to countries that have maybe more industrialized Western countries. People try to come from all over the world for different reasons, and then the indigenous population tends to be like, oh, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can understand the where you're coming from in the art, and I think it's important things for artists to speak out in different ways. So I think that's really good.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to get into is we're going to get into your other video, which is a little longer form, and I think I have it queued up now. I was just trying to set it up.
Okay.
So I think this is the other video. So maybe you talk a little bit about what this is. It's not going to be the full 40 minutes. It's only I think 6.
Yeah. Also maybe 4 or 5 minutes. This is a performance I did in Varese in May, a couple of weeks ago, and I perform with a spoken word poetry. This is the same song that I have in my album. So Entelechyia is the same.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I repeated these poems in loop for 40 minutes, about 40 minutes, in front of an art gallery, the Lavito and Friends Art Gallery, during an art festival, the Insight Photo Festival.
That's awesome. I think that's kind of I think I've been getting more into that. We've got, when we do it, we're doing a concert in July, and we've got some spoken word artists, going to be talking. Actually, I think because to me, spoken word is part of music. It's part of the art. It's some people that maybe don't think so, but I've been trying to encourage it, and I started again in that kind of way. Then I transferred into other things, but it's something I still thinking about actually doing a collection of poetry I did, and actually doing something like what you're doing here. So it's inspiring me to maybe go back and take something I did and take it off the shelf and do it. And I was like, there's more people doing this. Maybe I should do it. So here we go. We're gonna go into this one. Same thing. This is a little longer clip, so then we come back and we'll actually go through the questions I sent.
Okay.
Hold on. I'll get this going.
Tutto il peso dell'infinito in alto, trascinato a negativo ricorrendo i passi, le luci a Natale, un grido, l'attesa, le frecce dell'auto, la mia voce, un audio di silenzio infrattendente, sospeso dal momento in cui il nome, incudine, avrei dovuto. Così inciampo, tra l'osservo e un poco più basso, dice che ha toccato lo stesso punto. Dice che ha toccato lo stesso punto. Lunedì qualcuno mi ha detto: Anna, lei è una donna forte. Che cosa ne pensa di Antigone? Cosa avrebbe fatto lei al suo posto? Cosa penso intorno alla morte, la forma decisiva e Soffocles? Non ci ho riflettuto abbastanza. A 80 ppm ho risposto che stavo andando a dormire, invece sono ancora qui. La statua si rivela autonoma, apolide, assente, si è sciolta e scontrata con l'intero per seppellire un corpo, come se ciò, piuttosto che tramutarlo in colibrì dopo 4 anni, ne quantificasse il valore e incorporarlo nella terra, potesse riportarlo in vita. Crizia le avrebbe detto, ecco, di nuovo, quei gridi. Crizia le avrebbe ricordato, Dio è nostro figlio. Il valore si misura in base al numero di like ed è necessario abbandonare gli altri a morire in mare. Che ci importa? Ci sono i pesci che li mangiano. Ma noi peschiamo i pesci e poi mangiamo i pesci. E così mangiamo i morti. Crizia le avrebbe ricordato, Dio è nostro figlio. Il valore si misura in base al numero di like ed è necessario abbandonare gli altri a morire in mare. Che ci importa? Ci sono i pesci che li mangiano. Ma noi peschiamo i pesci e poi mangiamo i pesci. E così mangiamo i morti. Crizia le avrebbe ricordato, Dio è nostro figlio. Il valore si misura in base al numero di like ed è necessario abbandonare gli altri a morire in mare. Che ci importa? Ci sono i pesci che li mangiano. Ma noi peschiamo i pesci e poi mangiamo i pesci. E così mangiamo i morti. Crizia le avrebbe ricordato, Dio è nostro figlio. Il valore si misura in base al numero di like ed è necessario abbandonare gli altri a morire in mare. Che ci importa? Ci sono i pesci che li mangiano. Ma noi peschiamo i pesci e poi mangiamo i pesci. E così mangiamo i morti. Crizia le avrebbe ricordato, Dio è nostro figlio. Il valore si misura in base al numero di like ed è necessario abbandonare gli altri a morire in mare. Che ci importa? Ci sono i pesci che li mangiano. Ma noi peschiamo i pesci e poi mangiamo i pesci. E così mangiamo i morti. Crizia le avrebbe ricordato, Dio è nostro figlio. Il valore si misura in base al numero di like ed è necessario abbandonare gli altri a morire in mare. Che ci importa? Ci sono i pesci che mangiano. Ma noi peschiamo i pesci e poi mangiamo i pesci. E così mangiamo i morti. Il corpo non termina con la pelle. Le parole sono azioni. Sembrano trasparenti, ma non restano solo suoni. Il vuoto coincide. L'energia coincide. Una sillaba è ciò che c'è perché.
So that was Anna Utopia, and we're back with Anna Utopia. So
Yeah.
maybe you can talk a little bit more
L'asta.
about. Oh, let me make sure I stop it.
Tutto.
Yes.
Talk more about the performance at the festival and you know, your costume, maybe like what you're trying to. I know you're a performance artist.
yeah.
What you're trying to, you know, do as a performance artist with that piece.
Yeah, first of all, my performance in Varese, the title was Vox. That is the Latin word for voice. So I wanted people to be focused on my voice and on what I had written, so, and not on my face or on my bodies. And so for this reason, I was wearing the hood, this total hood. Yeah, and
I was thinking that maybe that's what you were doing, because I saw that it was Latin for voice, and I saw that you tried to not be distract anybody with your face.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really like the focus, which is what I like about performance art is you can do things like that.
Yeah,
they kind of direct the focus.
Yeah. And in this poem, there are some provocative lines I tried to translate in English, but of course my writing style is lost in translation, so it's not so simple. And here we have Chrysia, who is a political figure from ancient Greek, and he's talking with Antigone, and he's saying about these people who die in the sea. Who cares about these people? After all, if they die in the sea, there are fish that eat their bodies. And so I say, okay, but we used to eat the same fish taken from that specific sea. So at this point, do we also eat the dead? It's like a logical trick, you know, it's a way to make people think that what seems distant to us is extremely close to us, because we are all part of the same network, biological network of the same environment, you know. So yeah. I repeat a lot of time these lines during my performance in loop, again and again and again. Yeah.
But it's interesting because you think about it, the soil and the sea, you know, we all kind of get sustained from like the cycle of life and death. And people probably just want to think about life, but death is part of the cycle of life, you know. And a lot of people don't want to think about it, but like, everything that's in the sea that's biological will be eaten by the organisms in the sea. And then if you eat those organisms, you're going to be you know, part of that cycle. And the same thing on the land. Everything that's in the soil, your plants take that, and then you might eat the plant, or cattle eat it, or chickens eat it, or so it's all a cycle. And so death is part of life, and life is part of death.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think that's really cool. As a poet, like I get where you're coming from, because I kind of grew up liking Victorian poetry. I like William Blake, Tennyson, Wordsworth. I'm very into like the Songs of Innocence and Experience from William Blake, and a lot of his art had actually one thing about William Blake. I'll just jump in. Is he was a metal crafter, and all of his poems are etched on acid metal etchings, and they have really, really elaborate drawings or illustrations. And it was like, and if you don't actually look at those etchings, you know, people a lot of times have separated his poetry from the etching, but you actually, you know, need to look at the whole piece.
Yes.
So I get what you're saying. Like, so when you take your poetry and you make it spoken, then you do other things like we saw in that visual video at the beginning, and then what you did with your performance. So I think, it's good to make like spoken word alive with other visual cues. I think
yes. It's not a genre very well known here in Italy. It is not so much considered as music, so it's very difficult to do spoken word here in Italy. But I am trying. So
maybe we can get people to pick it up on it through this international audience, and more people will come to what you're doing, and then they'll ask you to come to New York or London or Paris.
Maybe I will start to write in English, because my production is all in Italian, but maybe I can try.
No, I think it's good to do it in your native language, because there's some things of what you're doing is kind of key. And I am a big believer that if you're doing some work, that if you're doing a Japanese poet, you should do it in Japanese, not translate it. So if you're a Chinese poet or saying, I want to hear the original, and I will go listen to things like that, because I think you do lose, like you mentioned, like you lose in translation. There's some things about your own language that are key to your work. And so I think there are audiences in New York and Paris and London that could understand what you're doing in the way that you're doing it without changing it. And of course, you know, to break through, you do have to go to English, but I would still push your Italian work, because I think
Okay, that's good. Okay,
that's my opinion, but I know managers might say something else.
a good opinion. Okay.
I'm an artist, so it's like
Yeah, I know.
what artists say doesn't always, you know, translate to the success, because we just want to do it for artistic reasons. So I'm going to get into the questions I sent you.
Yeah.
And you know, I think we already kind of talked about number 1 and number 2. If you don't mind, do you think we've talked those out? Maybe we jump to number 3, which is like, do you often use like socio-political issues as the focal point of your art, or was it kind of just for that piece?
No, it happens quite often. Perhaps it is more visible in my visual art series. In the past, I conceived and designed some artworks on topics like must be perfect and consumerism and alcohol abuse. And to be honest, speaking about poetry and spoken word, I used to write in a very cryptic and hermetic style. Even Italians have problems to understand what I was trying to say. A few years ago, something happened. I met an American poet, Jack Hirschman, and his wife, Agneta Falk. They were in Italy for a tour. And I had the opportunity to talk to them for a while. And they made me realize that I have the skill to write in a more simpler way, with simpler language, and to use poetry to talk about society, and with a linguistic register more understandable for people. In fact, this album, Fogli d'Ombra, my first album, have a linguistic register more understandable than my past production. So I am trying to be more,
So you never know. It seems like what you're saying is that sometimes, like in life, you meet somebody you didn't intend to meet them, right? But they influence your work, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a happy accident.
Yeah.
You meet somebody and then they look at, you know, and they give you some constructive criticism, or they give you like a different way to look at your work. Because I think a lot of poets, like I like to use Victorian terminology.
Yes.
And if you think about the Victorian poets, they used to use this concept of little death, right? As a way to hide when they want to talk about sex. They would say little death.
Yes.
And then people today, if you say that, they're like, what does that mean? They have no idea, right? So if you go and use a lot of like masking, or like a lot of the poets didn't want to be direct, so they're very indirect about what they say. And they use language to put layers on top of things, so you have to try to uncover it. So is that when you try to simplify, are you saying you're doing less of that layering, or you're doing maybe less verbose composition?
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of like why I like William Blake maybe more than Tennyson or Wordsworth.
Okay. Yes.
Because if you think about like Tiger, fearful thy symmetry, it's a very simple line. Very simple. Most of Blake's poems are very short, simple, not very wordy. But they're just as effective as Tennyson or Wordsworth or Lord Byron or any of the other great poets in that time. But he was able to do it in a lot simpler language. I think is what you were talking in that.
Yes.
So let me talk about number 4. When did you? The fourth question. When did you first get into music? Like what age, or into your art? You're combining like music and poetry.
Okay. First of all, I grew up in a family where everyone listened to a lot of music. My mom loved bands like Led Zeppelin or the rock from the 70s. My dad listened to Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, Joe Cocker. My brother listened a lot of rap music, and I listen to any type of music. My musical education is based on classical music, because I started playing piano when I was 7 years old, and I took private lessons until the end of high school. But my musical style is spoken word. So, my main musical instrument is my voice, and my pentagram is my notebook, and my musical notes are the words, the language, I started writing poetry at the end of middle school, and I never stopped. And I do a lot of sound research on word, on language. It is very important in my creative process. Sometimes I want some sound, certain sound like sgr or st to appear in my lines. So I do a lot of research on etymology, and I began to dig in every field of human knowledge to find the perfect word. And sometimes I did not find the perfect match. So I needed to create a new word. It happens. Yeah.
I think I've done that in some of the stuff I've done with the ghost. I've kind of created this kind of old ghost mythology. That goes with my concept. It's kind of science fiction, progressive. But what's interesting, I'm a synth player, right? I play like analog, digital, Euro rack, modular. Like some of the synths I play are like from the 70s. They're like modes and like old technology. And the reason I like it is kind of like it's atmospheric, and it has like organic sound. And I like to think of music as sound painting. So a lot of what I do is got a lot of like color, or feel like a painter. And I think in the type of work you do, I recognize like a lot of the music behind your spoken word has this kind of atmospheric, progressive nature. Like it could have come from like the 1970s, like a Pink Floyd, like a Yes, a Genesis. It has that kind of, and that's where I like to write my music. So I totally understand what you're doing, but your focus is your voice is your instrument. But you do have the other things, and because I'm a synthesist, I do actually pay attention a lot to the music that's behind it. And I think it's awesome. I like the way it builds. It's got a classical nature to it. It's very much, it's like what could be used in film. It's really the kind of stuff I'm into, and I do appreciate the sound that you do.
That's special. Go ahead.
Is that all your composition? Are you doing everything with the music too?
Sometimes it happens that I compose my own music, and I like to use ambient sounds. So I don't know, when I am at the mountains, I record nature sounds. In the city, I record traffic noise or people talking. But for my first album, I collaborated with 3 artists, Giuseppe Fiori, Leonardo Barilaro, un artista minimalista, and they composed the music, but I personally followed the mixing and mastering phases with Massimo De Feo, who is the sound engineer and sound consultant for this EP, and it was mind-blowing. I really loved to work with him because the mixing phase is really interesting. You have to calibrate the sound, all the levels, the effect, and using your ears. And I really liked to do this kind of work.
I think what I would just interject there on that point is I was watching a documentary on Pink Floyd, and you mentioned Pink Floyd, and they said that, the mixing back in the 70s, every member of the band was in the recording studio and had a hand on the mixing board, and they considered the mixing board like another instrument because they controlled the emphasis of what their instruments. So each guy was like, there was a keyboard player, there's a bass player, guitar player, but each member of the band kind of said, well, they kind of knew where they wanted things in the mix, and then they knew whether they wanted to use like backward tape effects or like looping, or they wanted to bring field recordings. Like you were talking about, field recordings is a big part of progressive music. It's actually going back. You listen to bands like Pink Floyd. Yes, at the beginning of one of their albums, they actually took a field recording of a forest, and on Close to the Edge at the beginning of the record is a field, analog tape recording of sounds of a forest. The first maybe 30 seconds of it is just the sound of that forest. And that is a very common thing that older bands in the 60s and 70s did, but there's a lot of people today that are doing it. Whether they, and I think it's really cool to have that artistic, notion that you could take a recording in nature or just sounds out in the world and find a way to use them in your work in a creative way. I think that's really cool. I encourage all artists to do that.
Yes.
But so you got into music young. You learned it from like a classical kind of piano background.
Yeah,
which is kind of similar to anybody who usually learns piano. They have to learn the basics. And the classical is like the core. So how long would you say you've been working on music? Number 5 is like, how long have you been working on music? Since you were like young?
I have been performing for a long time, many years, with my spoken word poetry, often with music from other artists. I performed in clubs, art galleries, and museums. Maybe my first performances was, maybe I was still in the high school. So I was young, yes. And it was interesting because the first time someone asked me to read my poems, I was terrified. At the time I was quite shy, so I told him, please read my poems. Go and read. I can't. It's not my thing. But when I heard his voice reading what I had written in my mind, I was like, okay, that's cool, but no, it shouldn't be read like that. I want to use my voice. I need to use my voice. And so I began working on my voice and on how to perform with my voice.
That's why I think I've talked to other artists who are vocalists, and a lot of people sometimes forget, that the voice is an instrument. If you're an opera, or if you're like a 5-octave singer that has the ability to hit like 5 octaves, then if you think about like in the old days of music, like we had the Frank Sinatra, you had like the big bands, and you had these vocalists, and there was like professional songwriters that would write for people like Frank Sinatra, right? And even if you get to like Motown, the focus was on the voice. So like even within American pop music, Motown's like the biggest is everybody's like Marvin Gaye and Smokey Robinson. These guys had like perfect voice. And then later in music, you get the idea you can have somebody like a Dylan, who doesn't have a perfect voice, but is more poet, right?
Yes.
But I think Dylan's a good analogy because Dylan is a poet. That his voice is kind of critical to what he does, but it's what he says.
Yes.
But then he found a way with that voice to emphasize things, and it's a character. His voice is a character. He has multiple versions of that voice, and he uses it to emphasize different things. And I think, like as a spoken word poet, I spent a lot of time looking at Dylan because he has a very unique way of approaching his material. And even though people think he has like one voice, he's got maybe 5 or 6 versions of his voice that he will use for different emphasis for different things. So I think that's real critical when you talk about how you want to deliver your work. I get what you're saying. It's like it's a very big part of how you do it.
Yeah. One of my spoken word albums I love the most is An American Prayer by the Doors.
Oh yeah, Morrison, he's a great poet. I would
Yeah,
He was
is one
he
of
actually
my references. One of he has influenced a lot my style. It's one of my reference
yeah, I
points.
mean,
Yeah.
he had, like, a lot of potential. He like, you know, if we hadn't lost him in the '70s to, like,
Hmm.
match Dylan's catalog, you know, 'cause
Yeah.
he was, like, the other poet in rock is
Hmm.
Jim Morrison. Because
Yeah.
his work, if you listen to the Doors album, it's just it's poetry. It
Yeah.
happens to work as music, but it's more poetic than anything I've heard since, like, Dylan, and
Yeah.
even
Exactly.
maybe more poetic than Dylan in a way,
Hmm.
because he's trying to be like those romantic poets. He's actually channeling it and doing it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it is incredible, his work. I mean, I've
Yeah.
gone through all the Doors records, and, I was very impressed with that stuff when I was a kid. You know, the
Yes. Me
combination of
too.
the keyboard playing, you know, being a keyboardist and Ray Manzarek. I mean, I was always, like, very enamored with the fact that you had that combination of Ray Manzarek on the keyboard doing
Yes.
these really elaborate lines with this
Hmm.
really with this incredible poetry. You really don't have a lot of bands that do that. You know, even
Yes.
today, there's nobody that really matches the Doors. No
Yeah.
one's ever tried. People have said maybe Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder kind of channels a little Jim Morrison in some ways, but you know, maybe
Yeah.
not. But yeah, in some ways maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I totally
Yeah.
get what you're saying. So the other question I have is number 6.
Uh,
It goes into like when you realized you had a talent and then you decided to like write your own. Because I think a lot of people get into music, like you learn piano. A lot of times, if you
yeah.
learn piano, you're playing Beethoven, you're playing Bach, you're playing Chopin.
Yeah.
When did you decide that you would write your own stuff?
Um, I I really don't know, because I write because I like to. I write poems because I need to write poems. So there isn't a specific events that made me realize this. Maybe my first performances, as I told you before. Maybe from that point, I started writing a text more oriented for live performances. Yeah, but there is not a specific events that made me realize that I had a talent. I don't know if I am talented,
No,
to be honest.
I'm talking to you, and I do believe it. So if you have a believer here. And I know that artists are very much like that. You know, like there are stories where Hendrix did not like his voice, right? Hendrix thought had a terrible voice. Hendrix didn't,
Mhm,
think he was anywhere near his idol, who was Bob Dylan, right? So
mhm.
Bob Dylan was the guy that Hendrix was trying to write his music to be like Dylan
Yeah,
within rock music, and he never knew if he
yeah,
really approached it, but he did, and he was
yeah,
very self-critical. He was
yeah,
super self-critical. He didn't believe he was as good as he was, which is amazing.
yeah,
Given the fact that he was on like the best guitar player even to today. There's hardly anybody near what he could do. But
yeah,
he was very, and I think that is with a lot of people who are great,
mm,
don't really realize it. Which so don't
mm,
worry about that because a lot of times great artists are self-critical, and maybe
mm,
don't realize that where they are, which makes you
yeah,
work
maybe.
harder. It's
Yeah,
hard because if you
yeah,
think you're great, right, you might stop working, right?
yeah.
You might
I
stop.
never, I am never satisfied with what I do. I have to do better and better. Yeah,
I think that's the nature of being a creative person because
yeah,
the spark that makes you create is the fact that
yeah,
you think you can do better, right? So you're going to keep on trying to evolve your work to be what you think is the best,
yeah,
which will actually
exactly.
create great work.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
But
Yeah.
the other thing I ask about is like who are your influences and who are the people that you were your reference point? Like number 7 is like who inspired
Okay.
you to do what you do?
I told you before about the Doors,
Yeah.
but there are many poets who have been relevant and inspiring. For example, Sylvia Plath, Anna Akhmantova, the poets from the Beat generation, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, I like a lot of Jack Kerouac. I also appreciate French poets, Baudelaire, Rimbaud, Verlaine, and many Italian poets too. One of my favorites is Cesare Pavese. Regarding music, I listen to every kind of music, all genres. I like rock from the 70s, grunge, electronic and minimal music, Alvanotto, Aphex Twin, Chemical Brothers, Prodigy, Moderate New Order. And I also appreciate the linguistic use and experimentation of some old school Italian rappers. But I think that you don't know nothing about, I don't know, Joe Cassano or Neffa, so it's difficult for me to make you understand this.
It's good for you to say it, because like your audience, my audience isn't just the US, it's like where you are. So,
I know, in fact.
So the people who hear this broadcast, if you feel free to say whoever you want to, that maybe the rest of the world won't know, but where in your neck of the woods they will know, in Italy. So name check them if you want.
Some names, Joe Cassano or Neffa, when Neffa was younger. We have the first Fabri Fibra production, and a lot of other rappers, and they they have an interesting use of the language. Rap is a genre in which language is used in a similar way to poetry. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciate some text. Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of what's going on is like a lot of the energy in the music industry is in hip hop and rap. And initially it was kind of looked at, well, what are they doing? They're kind of sampling, but it's not just that, because like the lyrical content of some American hip hop artists is like similar to Dylan. It's similar to like Neil Young in terms of the actual depth of the content. There's like very good, really, people who could win poetry awards on the depth of what they write and the sophistication of it. Because the thing is, what's disappointing in rock music, because I love rock.
Me too.
We kind of lost like the Neil Youngs. We don't have people. He's still there, but we don't have like new people who have that kind of energy as much. And it seems like the rock has kind of gotten supplanted by hip hop, which is I guess it's just a different era. So it's interesting that in hip hop it is all poetry. It's the words are more important than anything, and so it's something that I've had a struggle in my music trying to incorporate. Though a lot of what I do is spoken word, but I use vocoders and voice transformers to create voices. But I'm trying to sing. A lot of it is kind of based in what I do is I would call stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness. Almost every one of my tracks. Stream of consciousness style of recording, which is kind of old school. In rock music, a lot of old bands used to just go in the studio and lay it down and figure out what they were going to do, and they kind of just like let the tape run, and then they found something. Frank Zappa was famous for that. He would just do tape all of his performance, and then he would go and find, this line from this performance, this line from this performance, and then he started cutting the tapes, and it's like, here's a new song, right? And he would just be taping like everything, and then he would go back into his house and kind of find the songs from all the tapes. And his wife said he would just like be listening to all the tapes and start merging ideas. Which is really, I think, a cool way to process. I actually have started to tape all my live concerts, and then I go back and I actually construct songs from my live jamming, which I was reading about how Frank Zappa did it, and for the last 2 years, that's like most of my songs have been constructed out of live jam.
I understand that, because it is something similar to what happens to me with my notebook. I write down all my feeling, all my vision, a lot of stream of consciousness, and so I isolate some part and I reuse it and refine it. So I understand perfectly what you are saying.
Yeah, I think it's good because sometimes if you just sit down and say, I'm going to write a song or I'm going to
Yeah,
write a poem, to me, it doesn't work. To me,
yeah,
the muse just comes out of nowhere. I could be like, wake up
yeah,
at 2 o'clock in the morning and jump
yeah,
on my notepad and write something.
yeah,
I could be out on my bicycle and then suddenly, oh, I got to stop and do a voice recorder because,
yes,
it just comes out of nowhere. It's like most of my ideas, like if I try to write something, most of my ideas come from like this kind of stream of consciousness. It seems like sometimes I'll have a full song that just seems to come out of nowhere. Like I
yes,
tap into something and it just comes to me. And because I
yes,
don't I try not to fight it. I try not to analyze it because I like it just if you analyze it, then you wreck it. Then you're just kind of like, okay, I just gotta listen to what's coming and take it.
yes, yes. It's the same for me. Yeah, I understand perfectly what you are saying. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that like the one that I'll tell another story about Hendrix. Hendrix,
Mm.
one time he was playing like with like a famous band. He was playing with like the Isley Brothers, which is a big
Okay,
American funk band. Hendrix was actually a member of the Isley Brothers. He used to actually play for a lot of different soul acts before he got big. He played for like Little Richard. He played for
okay,
the Isley Brothers. He used to do as a backup guy. He was like a studio musician. And
okay.
one day he was playing with them and he went off kind of and did something that wasn't part of the song. He was supposed to be playing an Isley Brothers song, and suddenly
Okay.
he went and played like his own thing. And they were
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
like, what are you doing? And he said, well, it came to me and I didn't want to lose it. And they were taping it, right? So he said, I know you guys are taping, and I know it's not your song, but I didn't want to lose it, so I played it. But I think that
Yeah.
kind of shows you that he was so into that he almost like wrecked his gig with his band because he went like, I have to play this so bad because this is like
Yes.
something that just came out of nowhere. It's not
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to do it. But that kind of makes you understand the way Hendrix was that
Yeah.
he just do
Yeah.
whatever he had to do.
Great. Yeah.
Great art.
Awesome. Yeah.
But let me think about the other question I have. It's kind of like your writing style, your kind of process. And I kind of get the question, it gets a little technical in the parts of it, but I don't know,
Yeah.
like, because you're a poet and you're a spoken word artist, but you also work on your music.
Yes.
So, like in
Yes.
today's world, like the question talks about using like a digital audio workstation or going into your home recording studio or a traditional recording studio. So do you
Yeah.
do like a little bit of all of it? Do you do like stuff at home? Do you go to a professional studio, which I think you already said you do? But how much work do you do at home before you go to a studio?
Uh, Regarding spoken word and the text, I do, of course, a lot of work at home because I need to write the text. So, my creative process begins by looking at the world, at the society, or even the small thing like, the sunlight on a building, people walking in the street. And so, as I told you before, I write down all my vision, all my feelings, and I refine them from a linguistic point of view. So I am at home, or I don't know, on a train, everywhere. It's not important where I am. No, but as for the music and the backing tracks, I now for the Corona crisis, I bought a microphone, so I have an home studio, small home studio. My album was recorded at the studio of the various artists I collaborated with. When I compose my music, I use Fruity Loops or Cubase, or sometimes simpler software like Audacity is enough for my needs. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I think
I don't
like
have a lot of instruments. I just have my voice and maybe these sound levels, but they are very small and very simple. Yeah, I
I
don't
think
have to record the instruments. Yeah.
I think what's interesting is like everybody like we're living in a world where everybody said, oh, are you using Pro Tools? Are you
Yeah.
using like Ableton? Are you using like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you don't have to because like if you think about like my music, The Ghost, right? I don't use a DAW.
Okay.
I am using hardware recorders. I use
okay.
Tascam and
Yeah.
Zoom hardware
Yeah.
recorder.
Yeah.
And I use analog and digital hardware synth. And so I don't have anything on a grid. Everything is
Okay.
like, everything's punch in, punch out, like you're in old, like 1974.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And I put that limitation on myself because what I found is like, if I don't have all the choice that you have with a dog, you know, if I
Yeah.
don't give myself like a million different sounds I could choose from, and I say,
Yes.
here's my Moog, here's what my Moog can do, here's what my Roland can do. I'm gonna do what they can, right? And it's gonna keep me in a kind of certain area. But if you think about it, like even within those instruments, there's like infinite things you can do. And
Yes.
if you just like say, I'm gonna become a master of this Moog, I'm gonna become a master of this Roland, I'm gonna learn everything it can do. I've been using them for like 20 years and I get new stuff out of them every day. And so I found that like I can limit my choices, limit how I do the recording, and kind of put constraints. And those constraints actually give me more space. And in
Yes.
terms of like expansive sound, the idea I came up with expansive sound is this
Yeah.
idea of using these constraints to actually give you, say, like unlimited capability.
Yeah.
You're
I understand. I
constraining
see.
yourself, but then you give yourself this
Yeah.
expansive sound that you can't really match, you know, the stuff I do because it's not done on a DAW.
Yeah.
People can't. I kind of free form. You have to kind of play with it as a jazz artist or something. So I think I
Yes.
understand like not having. I think it's good to do what you're doing. Is to use simpler tools or different things. They don't always have to be like on the cutting edge. You know, you can be doing old. Like I'm using old 1974, 75,
Yeah.
78 technology. You know.
Yeah. To be honest, maybe 3 months ago, an artist asked me a collaboration. I don't have a microphone at home, and everything was closed due to the coronavirus. I recorded my voice with my smartphone.
Yeah.
and I refined my voice with Audacity, and then I send to them the recordings, and he used them. And
Well, the thing is, like a lot of people got to understand. If you go back and think about like a Motown record, right? You go think about like a record from 1930, right? If you think about something from 1920, 1930, 1940, the sound isn't going to be what it is today, but people still like it.
Yes.
So the idea that you have to have a $5,000 mic,
no,
right? You can record, and it's really what is on the recording, you know, like. And so, like, if you got like think about, there's a story about Jack White from the White Stripes, right?
Yeah.
You know, people have $5,000, $10,000 guitars. He recorded one of the famous White Stripe albums with like $100 guitar.
Yeah.
Right. He didn't need to have the best guitar. It's how he plays that guitar. Right.
Yes.
So that's like I tell kids, like young musicians, like, oh, well, I can't cut it. I can't do the gig unless I got like a $2,000 guitar. No,
I understand. Yeah, I see.
Don't. It's like you. Is this really what your
You're
heart
right.
is? And you can get out there and you can do it, and you don't have to have the most expensive gear. It's kind of like, it's like what you're putting into it.
Yes.
What it is. You know, but
yes. Exactly.
I always tell people that. I get what you're saying. And they took your work because it shows that it doesn't matter. For all the people who want to make it matter, there's people who make money off of making it matter. But so when I have this question about where have you played live, and we kind of know that we showed you playing live, but maybe you can talk about other places that you played live, like in your career, maybe.
Yeah, I performed in clubs, a lot of art galleries, and also museums, most of all. And my first, not the first, but what I considered my first important performances took place in an incredible place in Milano, at La Buca di San Vincenzo. It was an historical jazz club, and now unfortunately has closed recently due to the corona, I think. But I really liked that club, but you know.
Did you find that museums and art galleries are the best place for the type of work you do?
Maybe in Italy, because it's not perceived, spoken word is not perceived as music.
Okay,
So you need a specific audience. I also tried poetry slam, but it's not my thing because I feel like a stand-up comedian. I don't know, people want to be entertained, but I am not that style. I am not capable to make people laugh. I don't know. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's not so simple for me.
I think spoken word, at least today, has a lot of performance aspects to it that sometimes the kind of clubs you're in aren't going to allow you to do more avant-garde stuff. And so it's really kind of, I understand what you're doing is like the art gallery. Because a lot of stuff the ghosts do, what I do with my electronic music actually fits more in more like underground clubs. So I understand what you're saying. Like, I can't play like in a traditional club. I have to go to New York and go to a club where somebody's doing like progressive, experimental, right? So the night I go is like the experimental night. But I can't go like on a pop music night. That audience is going to be like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same for me. Yeah. And maybe in Italy, the best places is an art gallery or a museum. Maybe it depends.
That's not a bad thing. I think because, if you think about like Andy Warhol and Lou Reed, when they started with the Velvets, that was all like art gallery stuff. And, Velvet Underground created alternative music because they started it in these art galleries. With the Velvet Underground in the 60s. And, that type of work that was, at the time, the Velvets had Andy Warhol's artwork on, like, screens behind him. They had actors, they had, all types of, different people. It was like a happening. And so there's like a mixture of, like, performance art and music. And it was, that is what inspired, alternative rock. Most all the alternative bands will say like, Smashing Pumpkins, Pearl Jam, REM, all these bands will come back and say Lou Reed and Andy Warhol, kind of made me want to do this. So I think they come from that space is not a bad place to come from. Because you can always argue that that's like the root of that type of music, or that type of work.
Yeah.
I think it's great. That's where I kind of live. I live for that type of stuff. But so I get to number 8. What are your thoughts about the future of music? I think what you're doing is actually kind of like the future of music.
The future of music. I think that the future of music is that of all artistic forms. It depends on dynamics related to historical and social context, but also on technical tools. With new technical tools, it's possible to conceive new musical styles. When the electric guitar was invented 100 of years ago, new musical possibilities also opened up. And maybe nowadays we have creative machines capable of composing music thanks to artificial intelligence. There is this supercomputer, Lamus, designed at the University of Malaga 10 years ago, and it can compose classical music. So who knows? Maybe the music or the lyrics could be developed entirely by artificial intelligence. But I don't know. I can say for sure what's going to happen. I really don't know. I'm not an oracle, so I don't know.
No, but I think you're headed in a good direction because we actually have a guest coming on next week on the 11th, a guy named Kevin Stratton. He's actually working with like IBM and their tools. And he actually is working on this IBM tool for AI.
I have done a workshop in IBM with IBM.
And they're doing it. They have these like Watson AI tools for music production. So the AI can go and set up your motif because it listens to you. So over time, it listens to you as a musician, and then figures out how to give you like a backing bass player, how to give you a drummer because it listens to how you're playing the chords, and then it gives you back this like artificial, like it's studio musician that actually plays based on, the thing about it is it has to learn your style. So
Yeah.
it doesn't do it
Yeah.
right away. You have to actually play with it for like a while. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
eventually it learns how you play, and then it tries to match you. But
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. I think that being a solo musician myself and
Mhm.
not always being able to play with a band, that
Mhm.
kind of thing is kind of cool. And then it's like I can say, hey, I kind of want a drummer that sounds like, you know, like Brubeck Quartet. So
Yeah.
it'll go back and listen to the Brubeck and then find a drum that might sound like
Yeah.
Brubeck drummer. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what
See.
you want. I mean,
Mhm.
there's other things, in terms of like where music is going. Are we gonna
Mhm.
get like another Kurt Cobain? Are we gonna get
Yeah.
another Dylan? Are we gonna get
Mm.
another Hendrix? Are
Who
we gonna get
knows?
another Etta Fitzgerald? Are we gonna get another Aretha Franklin? Are we gonna
Yeah.
get somebody that we don't even expect that
Mhm.
gives us something totally new? I think a
Yeah.
lot of musicians I've been talking to are kind of like, when are we gonna get somebody that does something totally new? Kind of like if you think about it, a guy like James Brown, created funk.
Mhm.
That was like new.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we gonna get
Completely
somebody that
new.
actually
Yeah.
comes at music and gives us something like, wow, I never heard that before.
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
Yeah. Me too.
And hear it.
Absolutely. I hope to see that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
hoping that COVID has made musicians like been work. The good thing about one thing about COVID that I think
Yeah.
that was good for musicians is if a musician is made that they can't go out, right? Then they practice. And if
Yeah.
they practice, they come up with new stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of
Yeah.
musicians have had like a year and a half to be like in their studio doing
Yeah.
whatever they want without having to tour. So
Yeah.
I think potentially the music that's been recorded in the last year and a half could be like very, very powerful, could be very, very good. And we could have a lot of gems out
Yeah.
there
It
that
makes
they're
sense.
going to start coming because it came out of like a crisis. It came out of, but it also came from the fact that the musicians are able to work on their craft without having to focus on other things. And the
Yeah.
musicians that were able to record may be able to produce like really amazing work potentially.
Yeah.
That's what like a good side of.
Mm-mm. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you thinking about in terms of like the state of the industry? The industry, a lot of people have opinions about like how artists get paid, how
Uh,
are record companies important? Should you just do
yeah.
it all by yourself? What do you think?
I'm an independent artist. So, okay. Regarding the music industry, sometimes it seems to be very ephemeral, an ephemeral world, It is difficult to keep people attention high. Maybe because also because of the social networks and internet who offer new contents again and again, so you don't have the time to focus and to know an artist that there is another one and so on. So I don't know, I am not so into the music industry, so it's not so simple for me to have an overview, a specific overview, because I always done everything by myself. So it's not simple for me to have a label here in Italy for my spoken word production. Is really.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. Because I am kind of on my own label. I'm an independent.
Okay.
I've worked with I've had distributors. I've given my records to record labels, and they haven't done as good a job as me.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll let this label say they're going to do this, right? I tried two different independent labels, said that they could do a better job than me.
Yeah.
And then I proceeded to actually do better just doing it myself. So I said, then I'll just keep doing it myself.
Yeah,
because that's the way the industry is. It's like I think the problem we have is we have a kind of like we have this like low attention span audience that they got to have everything on a playlist. It can't be more than 2.5 minutes. If it's longer than that, there's no attention for it. I grew up in an age where people listen to albums. Right? So you listen to Pink Floyd, you put it on vinyl, you listen to the whole thing because it's on vinyl. You go listen to Stevie Wonder, you listen to Intervisions, you listen to the whole thing, right?
Yes.
So I'm a person today, still, I will go and buy modern records from artists who still do albums.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who still do records. There's a female artist in the US called Liz Fair. She put out a record like just this week in like 10 years since she did one. But you know, Rolling Stone gave it like almost 5 stars because it's an album. It actually says something, right?
Yeah.
I love albums because an artist is able to do with like more than one track. They can say something.
Yeah.
And I think as a spoken word artist, you necessarily have to have people listen to your whole body of work, not just one thing, because you've got this. It's like a novel. It's like a short story. It's like a film, right?
Yes.
You can't just be on a playlist of like 10 over 20 other artists and say, hey, what's grooving? Like that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of money is needed to produce an album, a real album. So it's not so simple if you are an independent artist. So
it's difficult.
If it's that specific music style doesn't work in your country, so for
hard.
now, my production it's all digital, but maybe one day. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
I think what happens is if you're able to get to like a New York, right? If you were able to get to Paris, if you get to London.
Yeah.
And I think having a physical vinyl or because what's going on in the US is like if I go to New York City and I go to a small club that's like got 300 people.
Yeah.
And I go have a micro label print off like 100 vinyls for me. I will sell all 100 vinyls at that club because people like to buy it in that form. Because if I have artwork on it and it looks good and it's like I think the thing about vinyl is like you don't have to run a lot of them. You could run very small batches of them. And if you physically show up at a club, you can sell them and you can make more money on them than you would on CDs or anything else. So to me, I like to do like micro batches of something that would come like a collector's item to the fans that were into what I'm doing. That I don't have to go crazy and do 10,000 copies. I can do like 50 copies, 100 copies, 200 copies. And then people get to have my stuff. And if they want more, I can do it on demand. Right. So I think that's the kind of future of what we do as artists is we can kind of do very kind of pitch things for very small amount that we don't have to go in debt and be really wiped out. Like labels will say you got to do 1 million copies of that, and then it doesn't sell, and then they're sitting on the shelf. It's like no, you got you can actually do good as an artist at a smaller level.
Yes. It makes sense.
It's another way. So I think that in my opinion, the future is indie artists giving fans what they want, and in that way you can connect, and people want to listen to the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you actually give somebody a vinyl, they're more likely to listen to it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So the other thing I think about the industry, and we'll probably end here, going over a little bit, is just like the new reality of coronavirus for all performance artists is like, how are you able to actually tour yet or do anything outside of video?
No, but I just did the performance in May, but actually I have no dates for the future. I am working on a sound installation for an exposition, a spoken word installation, but I don't know in the future. I really hope that in the coming months it will be possible to organize live events. After a year and a half of online collaboration, I am trying to get back to live performances. I really need people in front of me. I want to see the reaction of the people. So it's really important, and I hope that it will be possible. But
Yeah, I would love to be able to go to New York and Boston because like I live in an area of U.S. called New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
what I do, nobody really likes where I live.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I have
The
to
same
go-
problem. Okay. We have a
so
problem.
I have to go to another state. I have to go to like Massachusetts or New York.
Yeah.
Right? In order,
Yeah.
it's in the U.S., but it's like 2 hours away or 5 hours away to get to the audience that will like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so,
I understand.
so I've been doing this online stuff, which keeps me out here. And this is a way that I've been able to connect, and it actually gets people to get into my catalog
Yeah.
and find out what
Yeah.
I'm doing. But I do want to, like you said, I want to get back to like New York. Like New York is the best place for us, because I'm in the Northeast. It's like if I choose, like, if you go Boston, well, I'm going to go to
Yeah.
New York because if I
Yeah.
go to New York, it could be somebody from like Spin Magazine or Rolling Stone or some
Yeah.
blogger. There's
Mhm.
all these musical journalists,
Yeah.
radio stations. Like I tell a story before we leave. I did this show
Yeah.
back in 2017, and I went and I didn't know there was like a radio DJ was there,
Okay.
and he heard me and he told me, "Hey, I want you to come back." And I had
Okay.
no idea, but that's kind of like the nature of New York. Like you show up in New York and things just happen. It's kind of like
Mhm.
going to LA. So because there's so many people who have pull, I wasn't
Mhm.
trying to get to this guy, but he saw me play, and then he said, "Hey, come back and play again."
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
that's why you like London, New York, Paris, places like
Yeah.
that. That's kind of
Yeah.
as a musician that we got to get back to that so you can make those connections. That's the thing about COVID. I think has been the hardest thing is you can't make those
Yes.
face-to-face, person-to-person connections that
Yeah.
every artist needs to move their
Mhm.
career. Right? It's hard to
Yeah.
do that online. I mean, we're trying to do it here. We feel like
Yeah.
we got a connection, but yeah, it is possible. But
Mm,
it feels better when you're face-to-face.
yeah. Way much better. Yeah.
Well, I thank you,
Thank
Anna,
you. Thank
for
you for the
being on.
opportunity for this interview. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'd love to have you, participate again anytime you want. Just, get in touch
Thank
with
you.
us, and we'll send you the
Okay.
link. And
Yeah.
this is gonna come out. I'll give
Okay.
you the link to where it is right now, and then it's gonna go on Spotify, and I'll send you that. So you'll get that. So your fans will be able to get it from multiple places.
Yeah.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.